Let's take a look at some examples of source integration techniques. On page 14 of his 1956 book, The Power Elite, the sociologist C. Wright Mills wrote the following passage, marked in blue. People with advantages are loath to believe that they just happen to be people with advantages. They come readily to define themselves as inherently worthy of what they possess. They come to believe themselves naturally elite, and, in fact, to imagine their possessions and their privileges as natural extensions of their own elite selves. Imagine you're a student writing an essay. The original text is on the left, and your word processing screen is on the right. Imagine that you like that passage and want to use it. How can you integrate that passage as a source in your writing? There are at least three options. The first option is to borrow the exact wording in a direct quotation. You might type a few introductory sentences and then copy out the passage verbatim, meaning word for word. But without quotation marks and citations, this simple copy and paste amounts to plagiarism, so the text is colored red for now. To fix the plagiarism problem and properly integrate the quote, you would need to add quotation marks to show that the wording has been borrowed. Then, to properly show where the quote came from, you would add a citation. In this case, we'll use an APA-style citation with the author's last name, publication year, and page number. With all the borrowed language clearly marked and attributed, there's no plagiarism problem. So let's turn the text green. As you might have noticed, this particular quote is fairly long, and so stylistically, it would probably be best to present it differently, turning it into a block quotation using adjusted margins and formatting, but we'll cover that technique in a separate video. Overall, just remember that when you're integrating a source's wording into your writing, be sure to use both quotation marks and a citation to give proper credit. But what if you don't need the exact wording of the passage, just the main point? The second option for source integration is to summarize the passage. When you summarize, you briefly capture the main point in your own words using significantly fewer words than the original. For example, you could say, as C. Wright Mills notes, human beings tend to believe that they deserve their advantages, with the citation reading, Mills, 1956, page 14. But what if summarizing doesn't let you capture enough detail from the passage? The third option is to paraphrase it. This means rewriting the ideas of the passage, creating a new passage of a similar length, but in your own words. For example, you could write something like this. According to C. Wright Mills, bracket 1956, page 14, end bracket, when people experience privilege, they have a hard time accepting that it is the result of good fortune. Instead, they tend to adopt a view of themselves as a special and deserving sort of person, and see their privilege as a right and proper consequence of their specialness. You might write it differently. But notice that paraphrasing doesn't just mean swapping out individual words or phrases. You have to construct your own sentences from scratch, or else you risk some murky plagiarism problems. If you absolutely can't find a way to avoid the same language, then perhaps quoting the original wording, or at least part of it, is the best idea after all. Quotation, summarization, and paraphrasing are the three essential tools of source integration. They can be mixed and matched and used creatively in order to synthesize your research sources into your writing.